Right, hello and welcome back to the Developer's Guide to Windows 10 Insider Preview.
That's right.
I'm Andy, I'm here with my good friend here, Jerry. Jerry, what have we got for this
We are going to be
session?
talking about interaction with the user through tiles in Toast.
Awesome. Right, so, tiles, like, really iconic part of the Windows experience.
They really are. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's lots of real cool new stuff around tiles and the way developers create them and work with them and the Toasts as well. It's pretty exciting new stuff.
Tiles on your start screen, but also your start menu. Very exciting in Windows 10. We'll talk about how to get those onto the start screen and how you can take advantage of those, but also how we can make them look super cool for your application. Oh my goodness, we have so much to talk about when it comes to tiles and Toast, so we're going to move fast.
All right.
And I am going to shift gears into super speed. It's going to be a Formula One session if we can do it right. All right, let's just talk about the basics of tiles at first. So the anatomy of a tile and breaking it down, seeing what actually makes up a tile. We have three types of tiles. Now, the reality is we have one type of tile, but these are three states that a tile can be in. The first one is sort of the static tile. We have the name, that's the short name of your application, its logo, and then that back plate that's either a color or the transparent color so that it can kind of show up and look cool on the phone. The other that we have is the semi-live. It's exactly the same except for we add the badge. The badge is just a number that can go anywhere from 0 to 99, and you as a developer can choose what that means to you. For the case of a mail, it could mean how many new messages you have. But maybe for your line of business application, it talks about inventory or something like that. It's really up to you. The third one we have is the live tile. So the live tile, or that live state, is the super tile. It basically can show just about anything. It has all of the icons and the badges from the previous one, but it introduces this added content plate where you can put basically you can just put anything you want. You can put images or you can put text, and we'll see soon you can put anything.
Yeah.
It just goes and goes.
Yeah. And have you seen the new start screen on Windows 10 Mobile on phones? You can put a real nice image there, and any tiles you have overlain that, where you've just used the transparent color at the back, they take the user's accent color with a transparency, and it just looks really nice.
It's really cool. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
There's a couple of ways that you can update your tile. Actually, there are 4 ways you can update your tile. The first way is through a scheduled update. So this is setting, whenever I create my tile or a notification behind my tile. So to be clear, a notification is that queuing mechanism that I can have 2 or 3 different tiles for a tile, and then the system has its own heuristic to animate between them and kind of show extra information about that application. So the first one is I can schedule them. I can just say as I create them, don't show this until tomorrow at 5, or anything else that I want to do that way. So that's the first way I can update a tile. And the next one is periodic. Periodic is very specific because it pulls from the internet or some URL. And then the server is responsible for creating the template and providing the imagery and things like that. And I can set that up on some interval that makes sense for my application. The other is maybe the obvious one, the local one from either the foreground or a background task. And it just allows me to update it directly. This would be true with my primary tile, every notification, and all of my secondary tiles as well. And the final one is the push service, where I can, from a server, push out updates to the tile. That to make sure nothing is running on my client. And I can also use push notifications, as we mentioned in a few sessions ago, to actually wake up my client if I want to make it so that my application updates it also.
Yep.
Updating a badge is pretty simple. So updating a badge is just that little number. And so the way that all of these will work will be the same pattern over and over again, where I go and get a specific template which translates into an XML block. So it's created and structured in a way that the tile subsystem expects it to be. And so what I do is I go in and I find the badge element, change its value, in this case to 47, and just use the badge update manager to update. And we're going to see this pattern repeating over and over again as we start doing other things. All right, so that's the final update. Great. And but there are some subtle changes as we start bringing those same live tiles over from one system to another. So specifically from one really high end to one really low end, let's say, resolution on a file. And so you can see it kind of goes side to side, this transition, as we go to higher and lower density. And what's happening is the start screen doesn't have the same flexibility as your application to scroll forever. It's trying to fit your start screen inside the actual real estate that it's given. Well, as density changes on a device, it has more space to show more things, and there doesn't make sense to just zoom things to be larger. So as a result, your tile gets bigger, but your content stays almost the same, giving you the opportunity to show more content inside a tile on devices that have higher density. And so this is important as we start figuring out what goes inside our tile, because we want to make sure that on every device we show as much possible content as possible, taking advantage of the real estate that we may have because of changes in density. All right, let's talk about templates. In order to create a tile, we're going to use a template. This is an example of the way a tile might be laid out on a system. So it could be laid out one of many ways, right? So you can just see there's so many variations, where the numbers are, where the icon is, whether or not it's wrapping the text or it's multi-line, whether or not on and on, with or without an image. The way this is supported in Windows 8, let's start with a kind of a history lesson first. The way this is supported in Windows 8 is with templates. And so we had a series of almost 80 templates that you could use to create all the different variations of your tile on your start screen. Well, the reality is developers loved it, but didn't love it, right? Because there were so many templates. And so we refer to these today as the legacy templates, and they still work completely. In fact, they have a visual refresh, so they have that kind of Windows 10 look and feel now. But one of the things that was fixed was the delta, or the difference between, the incompatibility between Windows and Windows Phone. Your application would choose a certain template, and it would look great on Windows. It would look fine on phone, but it wouldn't look the same, even though it had the same name.
Some of the content you specified on a template that was intended for big Windows, you could use it on Windows Phone, but it just wouldn't show the stuff, you know.
Yeah, like images in Toast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would happen.
Yep.
So this is the syntax, and hopefully it feels similar to the syntax you would create a secondary tile. In this case, I'll go to see if the tile exists. And the way tiles work are different. Secondary tiles are different than primary tiles. Every application has a primary tile. Its secondary tile, though, is identified by its ID. It has a unique ID. So you go and find that unique ID. And so in this case, I'm looking to see if the tile already exists. If it does, my details tile, let's say, then I can go interrogate if that's the one I want. I can also unpin it if I need to, or just go ahead and create it.
So just to clarify then, so the primary tile you define in the manifest, don't you? So you include the assets for it and you declare it in the manifest. You can change the content of the primary tile programmatically.
That's right.
But these secondary tiles you create and manipulate entirely programmatically. What do we what do we use these secondary tiles for?
That's a great point. So when I create a secondary tile, you can see there are two different properties that I set. The first one would be that display name, which is really nice, but the second one are the arguments. So you might have, weather is really a fantastic example. You have a weather application. Whenever I click on the primary tile, it takes me into the weather app, and then I pick the city that I want to see the weather for. Well, I may always go to, let's say, Denver or Reading, let's say, and I'm looking at that weather all the time. It really is a waste of my time to go to the main menu, select it. I'd rather just jump right into Reading. And so when I do that, I can create a secondary tile that's intended only for that city. Not only does it take me and skip the navigation, but it also allows you to push information out and show the weather for just that one city. So that's the secondary tile, and sometimes we refer to that as deep linking into your application. Really, it's just linking to your application and passing an argument.
Yeah.
This is that argument. So when it says arguments 1, 2, 3 in the secondary tile, that's differentiating to say, yes, this is a secondary tile that goes to the details information. Which one does it go to? It goes to 1, 2, 3, whatever that means to you. It's just a string, could be an identifier, or it even could be a serialized JSON string, so you could have the entire object available immediately.
So the kind of things for this is you pin your tile for your favorite, like you said, your preferred city for a weather app, or in an airline app you could pin your boarding pass to the start screen, and that would be a secondary tile as well. So
yeah, that's a great example.
Good things to delight your users and give them something that's real context.
It's also quite unique to our platform as well, which is really nice. So this method, this request create async. Now in Windows 8, the request async was because the user was being prompted to put the tile on the screen for them, or put the screen, or approve this, it being put on the screen. That's no longer the case in Windows 10. And a matter of fact, two things would happen as soon as this happened. One, your application, it wouldn't close, but what it would do is immediately pull up the start menu to show the user where that that tile was, users were often confused because they thought that the application had crashed. And so that behavior has been taken away, so you can add a tile without going to the start screen. But what also was true is that you would add a tile, and then you would add another tile, and then you would add another tile, and each one would prompt the user if you needed 3 tiles for whatever your application did. That's no longer the case anymore either. We can now set multiple tiles all at the same time.
And on phone, so on phone on 8, every time you pinned a tile, it would suspend the app and switch you right back to the whole start screen. So again, on phone, that's not going to be the case anymore. You pin a secondary tile and it just still stays in the app.
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct. All right. Yes, that's right. Careful, stay on script, because this is perfectly scripted. All right, so use secondary tiles to deep link into your app. That's what they're intended to do. Also to bring information out. Remember, tiles have 2 uses. The first use is to draw the user into your app by showing them something that's very, very interesting. For example, you have a weather app and you say there's a tornado on the way. You turn it red and they come into your app. But you also hold them out of your application by saying, look, I know all you want to know is the temperature, so I'm just going to tell you what the temperature is. So there are two roles of a tile, one to bring them into your app, one to keep them out of your app. In the end, there's only one role of the tile, that is to deliver the most value to the user, right? And so you determine how that actually fits into your application's use case. Here's an example of some red lines of what tiles may look like. If you were building an application, you want certain things to be certain places, laid out in certain ways. And imagine now that you want to make this wide, you also want to make it narrow, you also want to make it tall. All these different tiles, how many templates you would actually need, right? It's exhausting to even think about. And the reality is developers tell us, please, no more templates, right?
No more, please.
We get it. There's just so many templates. In fact, we'd be willing to dial it back to fewer templates. Well, that's what we can't do, because a lot of developers rely on the templates that we had in Windows 8. But what we are doing is not introducing more templates. Well, we're introducing one last template.
The template to end them all.
The template of all templates. That's exactly right. We're referring to this as adaptive templates, but what it really is a template that's empty that allows you to put some XML in, freeform XML, so that you can influence the way it's going to look. So here's an example of 2 things. So first, just look at the image on the bottom right. That bottom right shows the exact same tile in different densities. So you can see as it starts going, as it's going up, it's actually just able to fit more text in the screen because it's shown on a screen that has more density, right? And so that's interesting, and we'll talk about why that matters here in just a second. On the left, though, you can see the layout of the binding. This is the XML syntax for creating the same tile look and feel. And the way that we do that is with, hopefully with markup that looks very simplistic, because it really is quite simplistic, where I would say text, 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 and pass in John Doe, photos from our trip, or whatever it is, putting that then inside a subgroup, or even better, inside a group, before I repeat Jane Doe's email. So you can see on the far right tile, Jane Doe's is appearing, but it doesn't fit in the other 2, so it doesn't appear at all because I put them in a group, and it keeps that group together. And if there's no room for that group, it just doesn't show. That allows me to be able to present more information to the user as soon as they have more density, but it also allows me to give a great experience for those displays that aren't as highly dense, right?
Yeah.
So pretty nice.
So I guess the key thing here is to make sure if you've got like really important stuff, that should be at the top. And the key there was, I saw the word hint on there a lot. A lot of these things, these elements are kind of, well, make your best go at this. And
that's right. So we do have an adaptive template for every size of tile, right? So we do have a tile medium, and we'll see in a minute we have other sizes that we'll go through. And then that's right, this hint dash style for subtitle. Subtitle refers to a style that we've predefined inside the system that you'll be able to reference, and there'll be an entire reference documentation so you can know what's predefined, of course. And you're right, hint dash style is saying go ahead and make this formatted as a subtitle, with the exception of, right? It kind of goes back to try to resize and things like that. With the exception of, if it doesn't work on this particular device, do whatever does work.
Fall back to
That's right.
Whatever.
Is your tile going to look like this when it's running on a HoloLens? Maybe.
Yep.
We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Here's another example of maybe how adaptive tiles might look. One of the things we can add, of course, is a background image. This is the way we would do that. It was just very similar to with HTML and XAML, we've already been taught how to build out UIs in this declarative way. This super simplistic way is meant to be very lightweight. Anyway, so here I can say placement equals background. It becomes the background image of my tile, and it's really that simple. I can start interacting with a little bit more sophisticated sort of styling, like wrapping and pieces like that as well. So let's keep going. A couple more samples of what we can do with adaptive tiles. And so here's the small tile, right? The implementation of this small tile is basically nothing at all. All we do is reference that template and leave it blank. I could add an image if I wanted to, just like I did before, because the syntax is the same for every size. Here's the way we might lay out the medium tile. So the first thing you might notice is the branding right below that. So I can say what branding shows up. So in this case, I say the name. So the name of this application is Hipster, Hipstnami,
Hipstame.
Hipstame. Well, you can see that whatever the name of it is, it shows up right there.
Yeah.
And that's because I say branding equals name. I could say branding equals logo, branding equals none, or if I leave it blank, it'll be both the name and the logo. So you can see on the tile, the wide tile to the right, it has both the name and the logo. Beautiful. All right, so another piece I can do is I can hint at other styles like caption and pieces like that. Let's take a look at another one. This is the wide tile. So the wide tile, the way we look at this is the small tile is 1 by 1, and the medium tile is 2 by 2. The wide tile then is 2 by 4, or is it 4 by 2? Well, it's 2 tall and 4 wide. And then we have the large tile, which is 4 by 4. Those are the 4 and only 4 sizes that we have. We have been talking about the wide, or the tall tile.
The tall tile.
That would be 2 across and 4 down. That's not right now, but we absolutely are working on that. We'll see that coming soon, and that'll be exciting. Okay, so the large tile, by the way, is desktop only. That would basically take up your entire screen on phone, so it doesn't make sense to have that. Anyway, so here we are with the wide tile, the one at the top right. So all we have to do is select tile wide, and then from there I can set things like max lines. So if I want it to go ahead and wrap, but I don't want it to wrap forever, I want it to still be nice and clean, I can do things like this and use max lines. So let's take a quick look at maybe how we might lay out the large tile, which gives us a lot of flexibility and capabilities to do things. We said this was desktop only, which means if your application runs on the phone and on the desktop, you're going to want to provide 2 different templates. One that's, let's say, tile wide, and another one here that's large that can be used on the desktop.
Probably be a bad idea just to ship an app with only tile large, though you're heading for a poor user experience for smaller devices.
I have to admit, I don't know what would happen if you did that, but you're right. That's absolutely right. So for a moment, let's talk about groups and subgroups. Let's see if I happen to. There we go. So groups and subgroups. One thing about groups and subgroups. So groups you can almost think of that as a row as in the table. And so every time I create another group, I create another row. And those rows, remember, keep together, and they only show if you can see all of them. Subgroups, on the other hand, you can almost think of as a column. So in this case, I'm saying subgroup 33, which is basically a third, right? That's its hint weight, which is its width. And so over here, you can see this image of this person is a third column. You can see it's a third of the width of the tile. And the reason I can do that is, of course, here's the image. It's an inline image, different than a background image. And I've set it to be 33. And then I set the next subgroup right next after it. And I don't specify size, which of course means just fill up the rest. And then I put in all the information. You could see that in the tile over here, filling up all the rest of the space. And then I create another group. So right outside of that group, actually I'm not creating a group, I'm just tossing it in.
It's that kind of a default group, I guess.
That's right. And then I put in an inline image again, one that's nice and wide, one that fits neat, and it makes me able to have a real rich experience inside this tile.
Look at you. You're on the tile. My gosh. How did that happen? Where's the XML for that?
The XML
Barry!
Live video on your live tile.
Yeah. I don't believe we have that yet.
It's like living with a 6-year-old. Oh, God.
So let me ask the question that everybody's going to be asking.
Do it.
Why this XML? Why not XAML?
Well, that's a worthwhile question, because here we all know XAML. Why wouldn't we just use a markup language that we already know? There's 2 answers to that question. The first is a XAML-based live tile is on the way, right? This is just what we implemented first. I don't know how soon that will be, but it's nice to know that it isn't something that was just dismissed. The second thing is there are some complexities around it that are worth thinking about. For one, it's exciting. You might get things like storyboards and stuff like that. But for 2, you have to think about how verbose XAML is. And so that verbosity makes it a little bit difficult, a little bit more work, a little bit more prone to things that, not being just right. Are all of the static resources there available for you? What about the size of a push notification? It has a limit. Are you trying to push down all of that XAML for a single toast or for multiple toasts? How are you going to handle all of those limitations as well? So that's what the team gets to deal with. You and I don't get to solve those problems because they're going to solve them for us. XAML isn't here today, but it'll be here, maybe not tomorrow. Let's just say in the future.
All right.
All right. So let's take a look at some tiles and just some inspirational sort of tiles that you can create. So this is the beginning of the Xbox tiles, right? And so you can see the sort of things you can do with different rows and different columns, stacking those and having a different experience on every size. Here's another one, a little more sophisticated with weather. So you can see several columns and rows, which is really cool. And so in this case, I have several subgroups, especially this tile wide, which is awesome looking. I have several subgroups broken up to handle each day, and then I can stack things inside of that, right? So really, really neat experience. So you can see I have a group at the top, and then a group at the bottom for the large, and then several subgroups to act as columns. So a lot of neat things I can do there. Here's basically what we've always had for, what is this for? The finance tile.
Yeah.
And of course, building a finance tile like this in Windows 8 really basically meant you had to go and create this as an image and then set it as the background image. You couldn't do this as text as you can today. So that's another kind of a cool one. Here's potentially one from the, this is the one used to design the, Photos app. And so it starts to build out what you can do with photos, including background images and things like that. And so here's what you might do, and we saw this sample already with the mail tile, right?
Yep.
And all the different layouts you might get with that. And then this is our maybe what our people app looks like as well. And so this is pretty exciting. That's actually one of the PMs on the team. And here's the calendar tile. And really, I guess the takeaway here is it's really up to your imagination on what you're able to do and not what you're able to do, because you're able to do it. It's really what you're able to think of and what you're able to innovate in. And we'll talk about in just a second, what if you go even further and you want to make it a little bit different? We have an answer for that as well. So this is the idea of adaptive tiles, not getting rid of the the classic templates. I didn't say legacy, did I? Did I?
Well, it did say legacy early on. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's the way they refer to them.
Yeah.
I think of them as classic,
Yes,
and I also think they're still valuable. There's a reason.
Yeah.
There's still a fine reason to use them. If you want things laid out in a crisp, nice way, and you don't want to monkey around with this, you just go ahead and just throw it together. So that's good. All right, so that's the idea of tiles. Now, tightly related with tiles is Toast. That's because they look the same, they're built the same, they have very similar sort of APIs around them as well. So that was around tiles. Let's talk about Toasts. The first thing to know about Toasts, first of all, before we talk about anything, is that these are transient. They come and then they go, right? That's important to know. It's also important to know that a user can turn Toast off as well. So just like we were talking about background tasks, your application can't rely on these to be an integral part of your application because the user can shut it off.
Yeah, but they're kind of interruptive alerts, aren't they? So unless the user has turned off notifications, they'll pop up in the corner. So it gives you a chance to alert them to something that is of importance to them. And you kind of have to design that carefully, because you don't want your app to be alerting the user for every tiny little thing, because they're soon going to get annoyed and uninstall your app.
That's right.
You use it when it's appropriate.
They'll get annoyed and uninstall. That's right. We're all developers in a cosmic battle with the uninstall button. Right? That's right. We don't want to be uninstalled. The quickest and easiest way to get uninstalled is to make your application annoying.
Indeed.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I guess making it not run at all would also be
well,
great.
that would also.
Developers are skilled at these sorts of things.
Oh, I'm a master.
Yeah, I feel like I've been teaching it for years. All right, so let's talk about the two main roles of Toast. So the first is glance. This idea, I'm giving you some information. There's some breaking news, and I want to tell you about it. Your inventory is low in your factory. I want to tell tell you about it. So I give you this glance of information that shows up, and then you can kind of look at it. And maybe you do, maybe you don't act on it. It's not intended for action. But then there is one that is intended for action. In the old, I say old, Windows 8 still, of course, our latest live version of Windows. But anyway, in the old version of Windows, the only way to act on Toast is to tap it, and that would cause your application to be activated. Now, of course, we don't just have that. We call that chasing. Now we have the ability to take actions on it. So you can see in the bottom corner there, we're showing information. So in this case, we're showing information that came from some sort of social network, and then I have the ability to like or dislike that comment that I see. So that's really cool. And what's important about that like and dislike does not launch my application. It only takes the action, completes it, and that's done. I don't have to change whatever sort of workflow that I'm already in.
That's really cool. So yeah, it's kind of disruptive to that thing of going from a Toast, having to launch the app to do, then hopefully the skilled developer will take you right to the place that's related to the Toast, but that's not always the case. So
that's right.
This is for little interactions like this is right there, right in the Toast. You can act on it straight away.
It's like the game Star Wars Commander. Have you played it?
I'm afraid I haven't. No.
Oh, it is. It takes all my money. And so it has this Toast that pops up and says, Commander, your troops need your help. You know?
Oh,
so it draws you in.
Yes.
I could have a button like this that just says, Commander, your troops need your help, with a button that says, go ahead and just take my money, right? I wouldn't even have to play. It'd save me so much time.
Save you so much time. You'd be so much more productive.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. All right, there are 2 states to a Toast, and this is new for us as well. Sometimes you pass in Toast, and the information is just too great to show in that small area. So now you can see on the right-hand side here, I have, don't forget to take out the dog, for example, and there's this little chevron on the side, the chevron indicating to me that I can see more information. So here's another one, for example, where I've actually clicked this chevron. It's opened up, and I'm able to see all the information, including any rich information like inline images. So this is the collapsed and the expanded state. We didn't really have this capability before. Developers just had to think really sharply about how short they could write their sentences that they were going to provide on their Toast notifications. So this is nice, these new states that we have.
Yep.
Now remember, if a template meets your needs, you can absolutely keep it. That's what we said in Tiles. It turns out the same thing is true in Toast. We have not quite so many, I think 4 templates in Toast, not quite as many. And we've now merged them with Windows and Windows Phone. So as we were talking about before, there was that situation where I could send an image in Toast. It would go over to the phone, but it wouldn't show that image. So then hours and hours of debugging only resulted in finally finding that forum article that said, yeah, it doesn't actually work. So the beautiful thing is now it does actually work. So send an image to phone, send an image to Windows, you'll see it in both places. In fact, now there's only one set of templates, and so there really is no differentiation across devices anymore. That part's nice. So you can keep all of the original legacy templates, terrible term, or you can still use adaptive templates that we used on Tiles. The same thing is now going to be true on Toast, which is beautiful. Okay, so how do I send Toast? There's really going to be 3 ways I can send Toast. The first is very similar to scheduling a tile. I can schedule a Toast. Say I need to have a Toast popping up tomorrow at 5. And as soon as it pops up, it shows up. Now remember, unlike a tile, Toast is unreliable. Not unreliable. That makes it sound like it's unreliable.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed, right? A Toast, you could ask for a Toast to occur, but you can't stop the user from blocking them. And so you may not get that Toast. So again, if you've written the workflow of your application so that it relies on Toast, you may have written something that may not always work in every scenario, may not work in several scenarios, to be honest. Thank goodness you can turn off Toast so you don't get messages and stuff while you're giving presentations.
What, like I did yesterday, you mean?
I was going to say, a lot of...
But the funny thing
you're
was,
in good company.
I had it turned off, and it still came up. And the weird thing
Insider
was,
preview. Windows 10 Insider Preview.
Yeah.
I have to think that our executives presenting at Build had to have turned theirs off and it not work too, because every presentation had a message pop up. Everyone. I'm like, come on, guys.
But the weird thing was, I got a reminder about some sales meeting that I've never heard of and wasn't in my calendar as well. So I think I even got somebody else's Toast. I don't know what that was. Yep, it's still not quite at RTM, folks. There's a few rough edges. We're still working on a few bits and pieces.
You're getting other people's messages.
Yeah.
You know what? We were guessing. Maybe it's because you were RTM somewhere? RTM, I'm using the wrong word. RDP'd somewhere?
Remote desktop, yeah.
If you're RDP'd before RTM,
Who knows what'll happen?
All right, the first thing you
my.
can do is schedule a toast, and it'll pop up on the time that you expect it to pop up. Hopefully. You can also locally send it, both from your foreground application, and this is really the only UI that your background application can implement. So you can interact with the user with a background task, or from a background task using Toast. You also have this idea of push notifications using Windows Notification Service so that your server knows that something is going on, like inventory is low, sends a push notification, and you get a Toast popping up. The nice thing about Toast over a tile is in certain situations it's preferred because it doesn't interrupt the workflow, but it's overlaid on top of it. So I may not see a tile update until I go to my start menu. I'll see a Toast update straight away.
Yep.
That's pretty nice. This is a syntax. Hopefully it feels and looks similar to the syntax we were using to update tiles and badges. Again, we indicate the template that we want. In this case, we're using one of the classic templates, Toast Text 01, which is basically an XML block. Then we go in and manipulate that XML block by finding its text property and then setting what its value is. Now, could I do this with a really simple adaptive tile instead, or adaptive syntax instead of doing it this way? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely I could. Right? This is just using the classic. So this is me interacting with the element name, just all using XML, linked to XML here.
The one you haven't put in a square there actually is the third line of code down, where you're setting the launch attribute. That's kind of an interesting one, because that one is because those are the arguments that get attached to this Toast, and if the user taps on it and launches your app in your activated event handler in your app, that you can get at that data, and that's how you kind of can form these connected experiences and launch the app at the appropriate place related to the tile, to the Toast.
Yep, that's a great point. Doing it this way allows me to differentiate between two Toasts. Two may be visible. The user clicks on one. I wonder which one they click on. If I don't include some sort of data, and I think there's a data attribute as well, right. And if I don't include some sort of data, then I can't tell the difference between a Toast invocation of my app and a primary tile invocation of my app. There's no way to tell the difference between those two at runtime unless you have data arguments being passed in.
Some kind of contextual data. Yeah.
That's right. So here we are at sending Toast, and it's basically the same, right? So I create whatever that Toast is, but I have the ability to create a tag and a group. And this is important when it comes to Action Center, because it allows me to group things together in Action Center in different ways, which is really cool because it also allows me to find the item in the group based on the tag, and then I could even remove it from that list as well. So the user hasn't interacted with the Toast notification that popped up. Let's say they're off getting a drink. They come back. That Toast is transient, so it's gone away. They're going to see it inside the Action Center if they want to, but my application can interact with the Action Center, taking it off of the Action Center so they don't see it because it's expired, let's say, because whatever it was I was showing, let's say inventory low, has been replenished. Pretty powerful in its own way. So this is the idea of activation. So inside your app XAML CS, so that's the core of your XAML application, you have two methods that you'll be overriding. The first is onActivated, the other is onLaunched. This is a little bit different than template 10, which has an onStarted, which combines the two, but you could do it either way. And so onLaunched means your application is launching. That means it wasn't running before and now it's launched. Onactivated means your application is activated. That is, it doesn't need to launch because it's already running, but it is being activated by something like the user is tapping on Toast.
Yeah. So if your app is actually running, and a Toast comes in from the back end and it's related to the same app, the user taps on that Toast, the current running app will just get an activated event handler.
That's right. So once you've handled it in one or both of those overrides, then the syntax starts getting a little more where you need to pay attention. So if I'm launched, right, the first thing I want to see is the activation kind is launched. If I know that it is, then I need to check the arguments. So first I see, look at the far right, the tile ID. So tile ID app means that it is app means that it is the primary tile.
Primary tile, yeah.
And or a Toast, right? Because they both have the same ID. The only way you can see the difference is whether or not it has arguments. This is checking to make sure arguments is not null, and I know I can handle Toast from there. Okay, so that is the concept of live tiles using adaptive templates to make them look awesome. Also the idea of Toast, they also use the idea of templates to make them look awesome. All right, we're moving great here. I feel really good. Now let's talk about interactive Toast. So this is totally a new thing in Windows 10. It's our ability to interact with your application from the Toast as if it is the UI. And here's some examples of what that might look like. We have three different views on top, and then you get to see what it also looks like if you were on mobile. Right? So, or if you were on phone, right? And so the first one in the top left, that is the standard tile. So or Toast. This is the Toast that we've seen all the way back from Windows 8. You just lay it out. There's an image. There's a couple lines of text. Well, what if it becomes even larger? You know, what if you want to include several lines of text? That's no problem. You can just start adding in that text as much as you want. And in the desktop view, when it shows it, because there's plenty of space, it goes ahead and shows all the content that you're providing. But down you can see directly below that here in the mobile view, we go ahead and give the grabber, and the grabber will have a limit to only show so many lines, and then the user grabs the grabber, pulls it down, and they can see even more. Again, that's without going in the notification center. That's without having to go into your application. So a lot of nice bits there. So a little bit different UI or user experience here. A Toast that is in desktop still has the same swipe away, which I always like, but a little bit different. That was a gesture that users just didn't pick up on in phone for one reason or another. So that's the reason the grabber is there. You can use that grabber to push it away as well. But I actually think the old gesture is kind of hidden as well. You can still do that for users who know how to do it. One thing you might notice here is inside this second template is a text box. So I get a message saying, hey, Andy Wigley just said la-di-da-di-da, which is what he says all the time.
I do. Yeah,
it's crazy. And I can immediately respond back here, typing into this text box, saying la-di-da-di-da right back to him. Click the button to go, and it sends, and we have an entire chat interaction. I never have to load the app to do it. Very powerful, very, very cool. On the right-hand side is the one we saw before, where you can have two buttons. You can have you can have up to 3 buttons on on Toast, and you can start cascading them as well. So I could have, or combining them as well. I could have a text box and a drop-down selector and the buttons as well. So you can really create not a sophisticated UI, but a more sophisticated UI. Perhaps that's the right way to say it. And so this is what it would look like down in phone, where if it doesn't fit, it'll go ahead and start truncating it, and I can grab the grabber and pull it down. But I still get the same experience, still get the same thing. This is one Windows after all, and these are interactive Toasts. Very cool.
And these are calling or a background task in your app?
Well, I was going to talk about that here in just a second, but because you asked and because I loved answering questions like that, when I click that button, what's actually happening, I can tell it a couple of things. One, I can say, launch my application and take care of it there.
Yep.
The other thing I could say is, don't launch my application. Instead, invoke my background task. Let it handle it for me. I can do other things too, though. There are also some special types of buttons where I can do things like alarms, and I can make those buttons be taken care of by just the system. So there's a system type of action. Yep. And then the third one is a protocol type of action where I could say, click here to see it online. And so you do click it, and it launches HTTP, or it launches mail to : or it launches Andy's app : or whatever it is I want. It's just the protocol launch.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of little things I can do there that are pretty cool. So let's go into that. It was the next slide anyway. So Toast scenarios. How are you going to use a Toast? This goes right into the syntax of the XML you're defining. The first one is alarm. Right? So I'm setting up Toast alarm. We were able to do this before. They're actually separate things. Now they're not. Now it's just an alarm that you would create, lay it out the way that you want it to be laid out, so you could have a very specialized looking alarm. I could also have reminders. Of course, reminders were also a sort of specialized thing in Windows 8. Now they're all brought together also. So I can have it as rich as I want to. You can see this one shows an example of a drop-down box that I would put there. And I could have that any way that I want. I could have something, instead of snooze 4, I could say move 2, and it moves over to my desktop, or it moves over to my Xbox, or something like that as well. Of course, that would be up to the user or the developer to implement, but it's the sort of flexibility that you have there. Also, there's another special scenario. Right? These are the special ones. The special one that's full screen here, not full screen on desktop though, just full screen on mobile, that allows for a VoIP call to come in or an actual voice call to come in. And again, there's 3 messages, or 3 buttons, for example. All of this still just using the standard Toast interface. That's something that you could already do as well.
All right.
See the picture of this girl? She has, she's clipped to a circle. This is an interesting thing. You know, whenever you see people.
See this a lot. This seems to be a style thing in 10.
Yeah, if you were going to do this, this is actually a lot of work to create this clipping of an image. And so many places, including Toast now, have a circular clipping built into it. So I could say, I'm sure it's like hint clip, I can't remember what the actual syntax is, equals, and you can say a circle from there.
All right.
Yeah. All right, so these are Toast notifications, and let's just kind of feel out what the syntax might look like. You know, so we can kind of see, we did this with tiles. Let's see what it looks like with Toast. We start with the template, and so we have this Toast generic. Remember, you would pick different sizes of templates in tiles.
So this is obviously this new one with a flexible XML syntax.
That's right.
Same as the Toast tile, yeah.
What's different than the tile, though, is this is the only one. You don't need to pick wide or medium or anything like that. You just pick this and start filling it in. And so in this case, you can see it's very similar to before, where I have an image, and I can have that image that be in 3 different places. I could have it the background image. I could have it an inline image. Actually, you know, I said background image. I'm not 100% sure there is a background image to a Toast. But I know that you can have it inline, right? That would be like this one of this room or whatever that is. And but I can also do this app logo override. And so by default, you get the app logo right here in your Toast that shows the logo for your application. But you might want to shift that to show something that's relevant to the message that's coming in. Now you can. It's really great. And so that's what's going on here. Then I start filling it in just like I would any other way, where I would say text, text, image, image, text, text, you know, grouping them and things like that, laying out the way that I want it to be laid out. And so that's the idea of adaptive templates inside a Toast notification, and pretty powerful. What if I wanted to add some interactions? Well, I know that I can add, I'll just go back to that syntax and point out everything is inside this binding, right, in the visual tag. So I could go, and instead of inside the binding, I go inside actions. So the first might be an input, and I set up its type to be a selection. And as soon as it's selection, I can start adding items to it. So in this case, I've added 3 items, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 20 minutes. Again, I could add anything that I want here. It's totally up to me.
That's a nice drop-down box then. Yeah.
Nice little drop-down box. And I could add other things, right? Actions is plural. I could add another input box if it needed to be 2. It's just one of those things. Now, you can't have sophisticated user interaction here, but you can have some. And so it's up to you as a developer to be able to make the most of what we've got. Obviously, there's a lot you can do even just right here. So this is what if you want the user to input back to you. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. Another thing that you might want is to add buttons to your application. So these are the actions on the Toast, right? And so if I have actions or buttons on the Toast, obviously it goes inside the actions tag, and now I just add an individual tag called action. And from there I can select whatever its activation type is. So remember we talked about all those different types. One of them was system. This is an example of system, where I can dismiss an alarm or snooze an alarm, and the system will handle that for me. So that part is really nice. Obviously up top, if we were to look at the completed XML for this, we'd see that this is a special case of alarm that it's going to be doing this for.
And obviously this syntax, you'll find this up on MSDN in the documentation to explain all of this in due course.
Due course is the right word, because right now the adaptive syntax, although it's set, isn't documented in a way that is awesome yet. Right? Let's just say it that way.
Potentially awesome.
Yeah, we are on the verge of awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get there.
Emerging awesomeness.
Yes, yeah. Closer to awesome than ever. That's not going to be the marketing strategy for nearly great. All right, just kidding, of course. Here we are with alarms are Toast. So remember when I said that before, when it used to be that these were separate. Now, beautifully, they're all brought together. So when you're interacting with the user in some sort of way like this that looks the same, it actually is the same technology, and you can start building onto it the way that you want to, adding in your own visuals to look the way is appropriate for your application. So that part is nice when you set that specific scenario for your Toast. Then we go into some extra customizations. We talked about how you can override the app logo, adding different sections, as well as this new activation type. So I could have a button. In this case, you'll see that the button is not a button, right? The button is actually a small little hint button on the right. And I can do a couple of things. Of course, I could change its logo. Right here, I could change it to be whatever custom logo I want to. That would be like the send button.
So that little paper airplane icon is send.png in this.
I have to give whatever designer designed that credit, that they can take those two triangles and you thought it was a paper airplane. That's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that too.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. Good job.
Yeah. It turns out it's not. No, just kidding. No, I'm kidding. It's an alligator.
You're messing with me,
it's an
Matt.
alligator that eats your... No. But I do want to show activation types. So this is another one of those activation types. Earlier we saw system. This one is background. This is basically saying when the user clicks this button, then I want you to call my background. How does the background know what's going on? Because of the arguments of the button that get passed into it. It'll see that it has the argument of dismiss, and so it knows what to do, as well as be able to read all of the other form fields on the on it. So let's go through all of the activation types so we get our heads wrapped around it. So Windows 8 gave us this one. We tap on the button, in this case, not really a button, we tap on the toast, and the app launches or activates. We retrieve the arguments that were passed into us. Hopefully the developer included some sort of argument, and then we take some action.
So this was, you said this was the one and only way that they were handled in Windows 8.
That is right. That's right. So here's what's new inside Windows 10. Now I have the ability to do the exact same thing as above, which I think is important to show that workflow is about the same, with the exception of it's calling my background task, which the win there is there's no UI, right? That's what's important. There's no UI. Then also there's another one here for protocol, and so that's where I can call it HTTP, but not just HTTP. I could also call, say, Bing Maps, right? Or any application that has protocol activation as part of it. My text is slipping down just a little here. Another one I can do is tap the button and just let the system handle it. That's if activation type is system. And there's really only those two right now, that dismiss and that snooze. Those are the only ones that are supported.
For alarms and reminders, yeah.
For alarms and reminders, yeah. There will be future activation types. Maybe.
Right.
Some sort of holographic activation.
I think so.
Robotic activation.
Yeah.
Thermonuclear war activation.
Yeah.
You never know. Self-awareness. All right, so we're talking about tiles. Tiles are such an important part of your application to be able to deliver value to the user. In fact, let me show, we're just a minute or two ahead of schedule here. Let me show you something really groovy here. I have this application that the Tiles team built, or the Toast team. Well, they're the same team, actually. The Tiles and Toast team built, and they showed us at Build, and it's really quite cool. So one of the things that I can do is I can pop up a Toast notification. So here's a Toast notification. I'll change this so it says Andy Wiggs. Oh, you probably don't like Andy Wiggly.
You're right.
How about Andy Wigglies?
That'll do, whatever.
Right, and so I could say it's a Windows 10 Jumpstart.
Yeah.
Right, and then I have the ability to put it in a specific group. And this time it's group 1. Doesn't really have a lot of meaning to it, but it's okay. I could find it then by searching through that group. And then I could also set its tag, which is sort of like its ID inside that group. And then I could set when it's going to expire. It's not 30 seconds or not. It's whatever time span I pick for it to expire.
Yeah.
So this is nice if I'm sending information that is sort of volatile information. I don't want to build an application to go and get them all. I just want to show you this. And if you don't see it in the next half hour, then just forget it, right? Maybe it's some sort of coupon advertisement to say, come now and I'll give you 10% off.
Expiration on it, yeah.
That's exactly right. So let me go ahead and pop this up so it would be like, would be this one, right? So here, Andy Wiggly's right there, right? It looks exactly the way I'd want with all 3 of these active. And what these are all showing protocol activation. So if I click near me, I get to find where Andy, where you are near me, right?
Yeah.
What it's really doing though is it's launching, this is launching the Bing Maps application.
Bing Maps, yeah.
Sorry, I totally got trapped on that. The Bing. I was wondering if we renamed it or something. This is the Bing Maps application showing where we are, and it's looking for you in some vicinity towards me.
I was just distracted because I was just wondering whether to go to Darcy Hair Design or not. So.
But this is where you were seen last.
Yeah, I mean every day. It's a struggle. Keeping in check.
There is no question about it. You are putting her kids through college.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. So I can also. This is just an example of how I might remove it. So if I were to let me add that again, or launch that again. Right. Let's see this one. Right, here it is. But I'm not going to act on it, but I am going to open up my Action Center. And you can see it's right here. Here you can see that chevron, so I can see all the information and interact with it there.
Nice.
I could dismiss it right here. I could also, of course, dismiss it, the entire group, if I had several of them here as well. But here I can come programmatically, and I can remove the one that I found here. I can say, remove that toast. If I go back to the Action Center, it's gone. So my application can kind of keep it clean. And if you start cluttering somebody's notification center, they're going to be frustrated with your app.
This is kind of about avoiding leaving stale information around, which you can have stale information in Toast notifications in Action Center, just the same.
That's right. Sometimes information goes stale not because of time, so you can't just put a schedule on it. You're waiting. So it could be a game is available for you to play chess against someone. Yeah. Well, as soon as somebody else is playing that, then you want to pull that down as well. Something like that. Another demo here is the ability to kind of create those tiles. So here's a layout of all the different tiles and what they might look at. Of course, we can see that these are the base and empty tiles, so they're going to have the name and logo but no content on the inside. And then I can go in and add anything I want here, some sort of text. But then from there, this application is pretty nice because it just jams them all up there. If I were going to show you my start screen, it's empty on this side, but if I was going to launch them or show them, all three of them appear right here. And even cooler about this is, all three appeared, I wasn't prompted to add them, and three showed at one time rather than just one at a time. So that's pretty nice, and partly because I am sending all the templates as a single XML block. So that's the difference from when Windows 8 was, when it was one XML block, then the next XML block, then the next. Now I can create one with all my different bindings inside it.
Much simpler, much easier to program.
Yeah, it really is. You're right. I won't do this one because it doesn't matter, but this one is showing how I could create a tile but point it out to an XML block that's out on the internet. And then it pulls in, let's see what happens if I pin it. I could pin it, and when you see it, all the information for that tile, this is the tile, and all the information from that tile calls out to a website and then pulls in images, data, whatever that is. Of course, this isn't going to do it, so just trust that could have had other information on it.
I believe you, Jerry.
Yep, totally. By the way, I'm pulling from tile.xml, but there's no reason for me to not call from tile.aspx or tile, from a REST call that's returning that XML for me. Pretty neat. Anyway, so we talked about tiles and the way to build them, the way to get them, and the way to update them, and this new feature of templates. The same exact thing now with Toast as well, which is really terrific. And then we talked about how Toast also have this new interactive capability. The way they look a little different on the devices now, so you can see more content with that chevron that hides and shows. The way they interact with the Action Center, or the Notification Center. Did we once call it the Notification Center? Why do I want to call it that?
Yeah.
Is that what Apple calls theirs? Is that why? I can't.
Yeah, maybe.
My brain just can't figure out why I want to call it. We call it the Action Center. And so the Action Center shows all of your Toast, but also how Toast now can have buttons that interact with the user in a really cool way to extend the value of your application without them even having to launch your application. Very, very cool.
Yep. Cool.
Very, very cool. All right, that's tiles and that's Toast.
All great stuff. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that session. We're going to take a break, and then we're getting towards the end of the day, so we are going to come back with just a little bit more. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon.